Well, today was another day in my journey to drive and observe the beauty of the Old West. I headed north from Rifle, Colorado on Highway 13, a two-lane road. Uh, there were still what I would call mountains, but what the locals called hills as I started my drive this morning. But gradually that flattened out into what I guess we would call the high plains. There were beautiful rock formations. There were still hills, but there were beautiful rock formations. There was an isolated ranch or two, fields full of cattle about to become beef. As I traveled on, I could see the silhouette of another mountain range to the north. And soon I found myself in the Danforth Hills. These so-called hills were not as large as the majestic Rockies, but with every turn, around every one of the peaks, a new scenic vista would be revealed. A surprise every time. By the time I reached Craig, Colorado, US Highway 40, the terrain had flattened out back into the high plains that's north of the Danforth Hills. I turned on Highway 40. I almost had the road to myself. Going west, the only time somebody would pass me is when I would pull off to the side of the road to take a photo or look at something. There were a few vehicles coming east as I was going west, probably more motorcycles than there were cars, but a very desolate road in good shape. The further west I got in Colorado, the expansive flat plains evolved a bit. The highway ran parallel with another mountain range to the south, maybe 5 or 10 miles south of the highway, and there were also some hills rising to the right as well. But there was lots of rolling plains with expansive views, beautiful sagebrush, just magnificent country. There's a national dinosaur park. The National Park Service has the dinosaur park. It's more. I stopped at the information center and talked to the ranger. It's for hiking and canoeing. He says there's two rivers in there. The one that flows from the Flaming Gorge Reservoir is controlled, and there's rafting on there all the time. He said the other one was pretty much dried up this time of year. I drove on into Utah, and there were more open plains. There was a big mountain called Blue Mountain. And that's interesting because the mountains did look different. The rock formations did look different. They had a different color to them than what they had in Colorado. And when I got into Vernal, Utah, I turned north to the right on US Highway 191, and almost immediately that highway began a very steep rise up into the Uinta Mountains, UNITA, Uinta Mountains. The scenery was very different. And once in the mountains, the highway took countless sharp hairpin turns, 20-mile-per-hour turns. I was only going like 40 miles an hour on the rest of that highway. By the way, even those two-lane roads in Colorado had 65-mile-per-hour speed limits, and Highway 40 had 75 miles per hour speed limits. So this little twisty, windy road was almost a refreshing difference. By the way, I wasn't going that fast on those other highways. I couldn't watch the scenery that well. At one point in the peak of the mountain, in the mountains in Utah, there was a sign that announced the elevation was 8,400 feet. So I was 3,000 feet higher than when I left in the morning. And there were peaks to my left that rose well above that. Lots of aspen trees, lots of pine trees, more steep upgrades than steep downgrades. At one point, the road wound around and there was a beautiful view down into the lake that was formed by Flaming Gorge Dam. Then there was a steep downgrade, and I crossed over a bridge, and then almost immediately over the top of the dam that created that lake. Very beautiful scenery. Soon I was in southwestern Wyoming, once I got past the Flaming Gorge area. And when there, the terrain again changed to flat, expansive rangeland. This is where you sent your cattle out. There were some hilltops there. There were huge, beautiful valleys, but most of this was just big rangeland. I got up to Highway 80 and took Highway 191 north of Highway 80. Drove a few miles, and off to my right I could see the western slopes of the Colorado Rockies, or of the Wyoming Rockies. Um, they were, this highway kind of run parallel to it. They were maybe 10, 20 miles to my right, maybe further than that. Um, and we followed that path all the way up. I stopped the night at Pinedale, Wyoming, a big fishing town. There was hardly a hotel room available here. Very busy town. They had lots of hotels. Tomorrow it's on to the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Hope to see you.
Once I was young, so unsure. I tried any ill to find the cure. An old man told me trying to scold me. Whoa, son, don't wade too deep in Bitter Creek. Bitter Creek, out where the desert meets the sky.